12 supersonic missiles screaming through the sky at Mach 3. A $42 billion oil tanker erupting in flames. 3 Americans dead in seconds. And then, silence. The kind of silence that precedes storms. What happened next in the South China Sea on September 23, 2025, wasn't just retaliation. It was a message written in fire and steel that echoed across every capital from Beijing to Washington, from Tokyo to Moscow. In 30 minutes, America transformed a Chinese military fortress into a graveyard, and the world would never look at the balance of power the same way again. The morning of September 23rd began deceptively peaceful. Beneath cloudless skies, the U.S. oil tanker Liberty Sentinel carved through the contested waters of the South China Sea, her massive hull carrying a cargo that represented more than just fuel. It was a floating fortune of 550,000 barrels of crude oil, valued at over $42 billion on global markets. 27 American crew members operated this steel giant, their destination a mere 310 nautical miles away, the U.S. forward base at Puerto Princesa in Palawan. But the Liberty Sentinel wasn't sailing alone through these treacherous waters. Shadowing her every movement was the USS Barry, a DDG-52 guided missile destroyer worth $2 billion, crewed by 370 sailors and Marines. Together, they formed a moving fortress, fully aware that their route sliced directly through what Beijing brazenly claimed as its territorial waters, a self-declared wall of control that Washington had never recognized and never would. At 8:40 a.m., the game changed. American sensors detected the unmistakable electronic signature of a Chinese Type 052D destroyer emerging on the horizon. This wasn't a chance encounter. The Chinese warship, bristling with 64 missile launchers and equipped with advanced radar systems, had positioned itself deliberately. Its hull faced down toward the American convoy like a predator sizing up prey. No warning was issued, no radio contact attempted, just the silent, menacing presence of hostile steel. Intelligence analysts in Washington had warned of precisely this scenario. Beijing had made its intentions crystal clear through back channels and state media. Any American supply line cutting through the South China Sea would be considered a legitimate target. This wasn't posturing anymore. This was policy. And at 9:15 a.m., that policy was about to become deadly reality. Aboard the USS Barry, the atmosphere turned electric. Combat information centers bathed in red emergency lighting as klaxons blared. The crew strapped into battle stations with practiced efficiency, their training overriding the adrenaline coursing through their veins. Damage control teams sealed bulkheads. Gunners positioned themselves at the phalanx CIWS launchers, those Gatling guns capable of spinning out 4,500 rounds per minute of defensive firepower. Everyone understood the stakes. An attack on the tanker wouldn't just result in casualties, it would shatter American credibility and cause catastrophic economic damage in a single morning. At 9:45 a.m., the Chinese destroyer made its move. 12 YJ-12 supersonic anti-ship missiles roared into the sky in a devastating salvo, each missile a technological marvel capable of reaching nearly Mach 3 while carrying a 450-kilogram warhead. The entire volley represented over $180 million in precision firepower, all aimed at a single target, the Liberty Sentinel. Beijing wasn't sending a warning shot, it was attempting to obliterate an American vessel in international waters. The Aegis combat system aboard the USS Barry activated instantaneously. Alarms screamed. Sailors scrambled to fire salvos of standard missiles from the ship's vertical launch system. Silver streaks of interceptors hurtled skyward, hunting their supersonic prey. Within seconds, the morning sky transformed into a hellscape of explosions. Thunder rolled across the waves as interceptor after interceptor collided head-on with incoming missiles. The results were initially spectacular. 10 missiles destroyed mid-flight, each worth more than an average American house, detonating in brilliant fireballs that temporarily turned dawn into noon. But in modern warfare, almost perfect is never good enough. 2 missiles penetrated the defensive screen. What happened next would be seared into the memory of every survivor. The first missile struck the Liberty Sentinel starboard hull with brutal precision, tearing through reinforced steel as if it were tissue paper. The second found the fuel tanks. In an instant, hundreds of thousands of gallons of crude oil ignited, creating a fireball that shot 400 feet into the sky, visible for 60 miles in every direction. The impact was catastrophic beyond calculation. 3 American sailors died instantly, their lives extinguished before they could even comprehend what was happening. 12 others suffered severe burns and traumatic injuries from the explosion. Some were thrown overboard into waters that had transformed into a sea of fire and choking black smoke. On the bridge of the USS Barry, officers shouted orders through the chaos: lower lifeboats, rescue teams to the water, medics to treat the wounded being pulled from the hellish scene. From satellites overhead, the carnage was unmistakable. A column of black smoke rose like a monument to violence, the tanker aflame like a beacon broadcasting American vulnerability. In Beijing, military commanders exchanged congratulations. State media prepared victory announcements. For the Chinese Navy, this was the propaganda triumph they'd been craving. Proof that American steel could burn, that American dominance could be challenged with impunity. But they had made a catastrophic miscalculation. While Chinese officers celebrated in Beijing, something else was happening aboard the USS Barry. Fire crews battled the inferno. Marines carried wounded comrades to safety. Medics worked frantically to save lives. And in encrypted channels, a simple message crackled from Pacific Command to the Barry's Combat Information Center: retaliate, immediate. The cost of the attack was staggering. $42 billion in lost cargo, 15 American casualties, 1 ship crippled. But the U.S. Navy wasn't broken, it was furious. And fury, properly channeled through military precision, becomes something far more dangerous than rage. It becomes retribution. Within 7 minutes, a battle plan worth over $2.5 billion in deployed assets was activated. The target? Woody Island, Beijing's crown jewel in the South China Sea and the staging ground for the attack. This wasn't going to be a proportional response. This was going to be an object lesson in what happens when you strike American forces. First came the call to Guam. 2 EA-18G Growler electronic warfare aircraft, each equipped with $90 million worth of next-generation jamming pods, scrambled into the sky. Their mission was elegantly simple: blind every Chinese sensor, drown every radar pulse in static, and sow chaos across enemy command channels. Make Woody Island deaf, dumb, and blind before the hammer fell.
Simultaneously, 2 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers, each valued at a staggering $2.1 billion, were vectored toward their target. Their payload consisted of precision-guided bunker buster bombs designed to shred hardened radar installations and silence the HQ-9 surface-to-air missile batteries that protected the island. These weren't warning shots, these were execution orders. On the deck of the USS Barry, still scarred and smoking from defending the Liberty Sentinel, sailors armed the vertical launch system. 10 Tomahawk cruise missiles, each carrying a 1,000-pound high-explosive warhead, were programmed with surgical precision. Their targets, Woody Island's 2,700-meter runway and its military port, the very infrastructure that allowed China to project power across the disputed waters. The cost of this strike package alone exceeded $100 million, but the objective was priceless: restore deterrence. Prove that attacking American forces carries consequences so severe that no rational adversary would ever make that calculation again. At 10:42 a.m., the American counterstrike began. From 36,000 feet, the B-2 Spirit bombers glided silently across the stratosphere, invisible to radar, deadly beyond measure. Below them, Woody Island bristled with radar domes, missile batteries, and nearly 2,000 PLA Navy personnel stationed across bunkers, hangars, and hardened shelters. To China, this island was an unsinkable fortress. To America, it had become target number 1. The Growlers arrived first, their electronic warfare systems unleashing an invisible storm of jamming signals across a 400-mile radius. On Chinese radar screens throughout the island, the ocean transformed into a blur of ghosts and static. Commanders shouted into dead radios. HQ-9 air defense operators found themselves suddenly blind to the skies above. Confusion spread like wildfire, exactly as Washington had intended. Then the hammer fell. At 10:47 a.m., the B-2s released their payload. 8 precision-guided GBU-57 bunker-buster bombs, each weighing over 30,000 pounds, the heaviest non-nuclear weapons in the American arsenal. Within seconds, the first impacts tore through Woody Island's radar array, collapsing reinforced bunkers as if they were constructed of sand. Shockwaves ripped across the base, shattering concrete and silencing the island's command center in less than 2 minutes. Almost simultaneously, the USS Barry's deck erupted. 10 Tomahawk cruise missiles launched in rapid sequence, streaking low across the waves at 550 miles per hour. The first 4 slammed into the runway, tearing it apart with craters more than 50 feet wide, rendering the strip completely useless. The island's HQ-9 batteries managed to intercept 2 Tomahawks, a futile gesture of defiance, but the remaining 4 missiles found their marks with devastating accuracy. Explosions lit the sky as 1.2 million gallons of aviation fuel ignited, creating a fireball visible from 70 miles away. By 11:05 a.m., the airfield lay in ruins. Over 22 J-11 and J-16 fighters, representing hundreds of millions in military hardware, were destroyed on the ground, their twisted frames burning in chains of secondary detonations. The port collapsed into chaos. 2 corvettes gutted, piers crumbling into the sea, and ammunition depots detonating with the force of 200 tons of TNT. The casualties were staggering. Initial estimates put 150 Chinese personnel dead, with more than 325 wounded or missing, many trapped beneath collapsed structures. It was the single deadliest strike against a PLA outpost since the Korean War, and it had taken exactly 30 minutes. As flames engulfed Woody Island, the message was undeniable. China's supposedly impregnable fortress had been transformed into a graveyard in half an hour. For every missile Beijing had fired at the Liberty Sentinel, America had returned a storm of steel worth billions, precise, overwhelming, and merciless. From Tokyo to London, news channels broadcast the inferno live. Beijing's silence was deafening. The Battle of September 23rd was no longer about a tanker. It was about global power, and China had just been dealt a blow it could never hide from the world. By sunset, analysts were already calling it the new Pearl Harbor reversed. China struck first, but it was America that ended the day standing, while Beijing counted its dead in silence. Across Asia, leaders took note. In Manila, Hanoi, Tokyo, and Taiwan, leaders saw not just fire on an island, but proof that the balance of power had not shifted eastward. The lesson was seared into history. Reckless aggression carries a cost greater than any prize. For China, the gamble ended in ashes and humiliation. For America, it was a painful but undeniable reminder that deterrence lives not in words, but in action. The world had witnessed something profound on September 23, 2025, the moment a rising power discovered that challenging American resolve doesn't lead to dominance, it leads to devastation.